Welcome, everybody, to another edition of our monthly kind of partner spotlight. This is where we have outside guest experts come in and just drop some knowledge on us based on their area of expertise. And so we are so fortunate this month to have Josh Weber from Big Red Jelly. They've been one of our partners, and I got to just pause, like Big Red Jelly. I mean, what a name. Like, here in a minute, we're going to have to get the background on how in the world you came up with that name. So not yet, but we will. Just so fortunate to have you with us. You've been a longstanding partner of ours, helping out with website design and development. And just super excited to get into the trends, website trends for 2023. So we're going into a new year. Tech is always changing, keeping us on our toes. About everybody has got a website. And so it's good to know what's working, what isn't when it comes to your website and how to optimize it. We always say that your website should not be a glorified marketing flyer. You should treat your website like a salesperson, right? And hold it. And so if you've seen some of our trainings in Revenue Engine, the marketing aspect of our curriculum, we always say, like, well, if we're treating your website like a salesperson, well, how do we think about salespeople, right? Well, like, they usually look pretty good. Like they've got their act together. They don't look too sloppy, right? So you want a website that looks nice. It's got good design. Good salespeople are pretty articulate, right? Like, they can clearly and effectively communicate with people. So if you got crappy copy and you can't clearly and effectively communicate through your website, that's probably another red flag, right? And then the last thing is you want to hold them accountable, right? Your salespeople, you hold them accountable, right? So like, they're doing a good job hitting their numbers, et cetera. So you also want to hold your website accountable by, is it producing leads for you? Is it converting people, et cetera? So that's just a little sneak peek into some of the training that's in the portal. But at the end of the day, everybody's got a website, and we want to know what are the trends, what's working, what isn't. So this is super applicable. And just know this training will be available on demand through Thinkific for anybody that is not able to be here live today. So before we dive in, just want to keep this informal today. So just know that, hey, there's no harm in interrupting Josh, interrupting me, being like, hey, pump the brakes. What are you talking about? Or I agree, don't agree, got a question. Like, we're going to keep this informal to try to help you get the most value out of the time today as possible. So we have an hour. We may use all of it. We may not. That's ultimately up to us. But so, Josh, if you wouldn't mind to give us just a little bit of, background on you, a little bit of background on the company. And then, of course, we got to know how in the world you came up with the name Big Red Jelly.
Sure. Thanks, Jeremy. Great to meet everyone. Hi, Jason. Hi, Rolf. So yeah, I've been in digital marketing ever since I graduated. It's been almost 10 years now. I've kind of been doing this, but specifically, I spend most of my personal technical time in web design, right? But I'm going to explain kind of why I think web design isn't the best term to use anymore. It'll be part of this kind of presentation, but I love it. I love the creative aspect, but I also love the technical aspects. I love little simple tips and tricks that anyone can implement that's going to vastly improve the online experience for their business so they can grow. Like, I love that about what a website can do. And I love that analogy that Jeremy just gave, kind of comparing it to a salesperson. That is very close to what we like to say, right? It should be like a robot, an extension of your team that helps your company grow 24/7, 365. While you're asleep, it's working, it's grinding, So
we always love the sound of that, selling while you're sleeping, right? Like,
exactly.
It's just making it a reality is not, it sounds great. It's not always easy to do, right? But it's still something to work towards, and it can be done. So
yeah, totally. So we started Big Red Jelly 5 years ago, my co-founder and I. So going into the name a little bit, we always wanted to start an agency that was more efficient, transparent, and effective than a lot of the agencies that we'd worked at previously. I loved my previous jobs, but I didn't notice kind of some patterns. There was a lot of fluff. There was a lot of fat. And so we wanted a more efficient team. long story short, I'm subscribed to the National Geographic newsletter, and we're exploring names. That's the funnest part of any kind of entrepreneurial journey. And I got an email about how they just discovered the red jellyfish off the coast of Japan. And the jellyfish is the world's most efficient animal, apparently, in terms of what it consumes and the energy it puts out. And redjelly.com was taken by some foodie blogger. So we went with Big Red Jelly, and that's kind of been our mascot ever since. So it kind of does represent one of our core values of being practical, efficient, transparent. And it's stuck ever since. So
I love that. You know, as long as we've known each other, I never got the backstory on that. I always in my head was like, what in the world is this name? Like, there's got to be a good
Jello,
reason
jelly beans. Yeah, we get that question a lot.
So. It's unique, that's for sure. Stands out. So, well, I love it, man. Well, thanks for that, and thanks for being with us. So I think you're going to kick us off with a little bit of kind of a visual on, you know, hey, what are some of these big trends that are happening, just so we can all center on, you know, kind of like, you know, new and noteworthy, like, hey, be aware of this and how to plan for it. Like we said earlier, if there's questions as we get into this, I may interrupt you with questions. But then at the end of this, we'll kind of create some dedicated time to just have some good Q&A as well. So
cool. Love it. Yeah, please cut me off at any point in time. You know, I'm hoping to kind of achieve two things here. Number one, taking a step back and saying, yeah, where do we think things are trending? I'm not going to pretend like I can predict the future, but this is what we're seeing. You know, spending a lot of time in web design and development, this is what we're seeing. So I do feel pretty confident in some of these directions. And then number two is, I hope to share some practical changes, additions, or ideas that people can implement as soon as this week that I think will have a positive impact on their own website or future website, right? So we'll be talking about, you know, if people don't have a website yet or they're unhappy with it, you know, these can apply as well. So again, backstory here, this is us, this is what we do. We specialize in web design and development, so we don't do other, that's just what we do. So I do think that gives us kind of an interesting perspective because we spend that much more time in this space. You know, we don't do SEO, email marketing, social media. We just do web design and development, but there's a lot that goes into that. As Jeremy kind of described, there's, you know, copywriting, branding, marketing automations, integration. So we're going to talk about some of that today. Right.
Yeah, I love that. I love the focus and discipline though as well. Like, it's not always easy. We go through this with our clients, right? It's, you know, how do you focus, be great at something, and then expand into other things over time, you know, as you break through the walls. So I love that you're, you know, you have the focus and the discipline, and it shows through the work you guys do.
Yeah, I mean, I could go off on a tangent about the power of niching down. We made that decision when COVID hit, and it was one of the best decisions we ever made. So for anyone who's wondering out there, now I'm addicted to niching. Like, I always wonder, are we not niche enough? But that is our niche. And instead of industry specific, we are, you know, service specific. We're just really good at this thing that we do. And yeah, that might evolve, that might change as we grow. But coming back to website trends, right? So I like to start with the fun stuff. At least for most people, this might be design trends, aesthetic trends heading into 2023. So the fun visual stuff, but I will get to some practical, technical, or development trends as well for those that are more in that category. Okay, number one, y'all have probably seen a lot of this happening, but there's an interesting reason why. By the way, there's a lot of design trends. I'm picking just some of the most common that we're seeing, and I'm putting them up here. So number one, immersive scrolling. There's a particular reason why this is becoming more and more popular. Number one is it's slowly leaning into AR, VR, and Web3. So for example, I think there's Oxford, or there's a university on the East Coast of the United States, that their homepage now has a VR version of their homepage for anyone who has any of that equipment. So people are already starting to lean into, okay, immersive scrolling or immersive kind of worlds, right? So you can kind of blur the line and say, well, Josh, I don't have the technology to create a VR version of my website. Okay, that's okay. But do we have what's called immersive scrolling? And then later we're going to talk about immersive animations. So you'll notice a lot more of these types of patterns in websites if you haven't already. They feel immersive. It's related to the scrolling, and it does a great job of storytelling visually, which is going to be another trend that we're going to talk about here. So there's pros and cons, right? It's not super practical. This isn't a great idea on all pages at all times, but it's great at telling stories, and you do feel immersed when you're scrolling through a website and it's doing these types of animations. Just go look at Apple's website right now as we speak. You'll see a lot of this throughout their website, right? So immersive scrolling is something you're going to see become more and more popular.
So, and this would be desktop and mobile. So this kind of experience, you're going to see it on both form factors, right?
Yeah, desktop, mobile, and tablet. It probably was adopted faster on mobile, but now on desktop becoming that much more popular as well. But yeah, across all devices, right? Generally speaking, on mobile, scrolling is just that much more popular than tapping with your thumb. No one loves to kind of tap through menus on mobile. I think most people would agree with me on that. So
yeah, that's really, and I've picked up on it a little bit. I haven't seen a ton of it, but now that you're telling me what it is, I'm like, yeah, I feel like I've seen something that was a little bit of a different user experience. Yeah. So how do you, are there certain plugins or you have to, and maybe I'm getting too deep too soon, but if it's like, oh, this is cool, how would I do some of this? Is it like, oh, you really have to build from the ground up a new site that's got this baked in, or there's a way to add in to something already? How does that work?
Yeah, so before, I'm a fan of, don't rebuild everything if you don't need to. If you're on a WordPress website, there's builders or themes, and maybe even updating to the latest version. Like that's the first thing I would advise you to check. Again, I'm speaking to a lot of probably different website platforms that might be listening to this, but let's just take WordPress as an example. Update to the latest version of your theme or builder, and I would not be surprised if many of them have this as kind of a primary thing that we're seeing in themes that's being built out there. So try that first. There are plugins or add-ons, for example, like if you're using Wix or Squarespace, there might be apps that now do this immersive scrolling. But instead of switching over to WordPress or anything like that, you can also think about, well, how can I build or design or tweak something that's already there that might make the scrolling a little bit more immersive? So just look at it's cool, the animations and the zooming in and the zooming out, but just ask yourself what the goal is here. And it is to tell a much more visual story that's engaging as I scroll, especially on a phone where we like to scroll a lot more, right? So
yeah. I love that. And one area where I've seen it, I think you can tell me if I'm wrong with this, is we always say that, hey, as you're driving traffic to the website, you want to try to capture as large of a percentage of that traffic as possible to the next step. It could be a free lead magnet, could be scheduling a call with you, buying now, whatever. And a big way you do that is, all right, free value add content that's regularly be pushed out through your website, through the blog, let's say, and then, hey, how do we drive traffic to that blog page, and let people, and as you're scrolling, it's like those opt-ins, those sidebar things, but on mobile, it's usually like those things get pushed to the bottom or they're not seen, which is counterproductive. And I think I've seen on some websites that are very heavily based on like advertising, and they need, that's their whole business model, is that there's some like immersive type. I'm scrolling through paragraphs and then I get to a section where it's like immersive, but it's an ad, right? Like it's an ad thing. And then I get back to the content. So would that be likely a micro example of some of this?
Yeah, so you're getting into some really good detail, which is, for example, like pop-ups only popping up or rows becoming immersive at certain points in time in the page. That makes sense when we logically start to say that, right? So it's like at a particular section, this call to action makes more sense than when I just have it be a pop-up on the side, and it's kind of annoying when I first land on the hero section or the top section of a homepage. So again, if you look at the kind of the theory behind immersive scrolling, It's making things more of a focal point when I get to that point in the journey of my scrolling, which just is now we're looking at conversion rates on a row by row basis, which is the next evolution, I think, of web design, right? It's like, well, what's the conversion rate of my website? Okay, that's great. That's also very vague. What's the conversion rate of my page? What's the conversion rate of my row and features? And immersive scrolling is meant to do that, you
I
know?
love that. And so one last little question, then I'll shut up so we can keep moving on, man. I know it's like, oh, all right, I thought we may need more than
we're
an hour.
immersed. We are.
Well, I'm immersed here. So you kind of teased me with the Web3. This is a lead in kind of build up to more of the immersive, kind of Web3-ish experiences. And so I just want to make sure I'm wrapping my head around that. Is that okay, like the metaverse being an element of Web3 and immersive type experiences that are online? Is that where you're saying like this is easing people into that, and then eventually this is truly an interactive virtual digital world, call it a metaverse, whatever, that is kind of powered by Web3? Is that, am I tracking with that properly?
Correct. Yeah. And I think people, I know I still am, just to kind of, sympathize with everyone who might be listening. Don't be too intimidated by Web3, right? That's a very broad term that there's a lot of definitions about what that means. One of the definitions for me is that digital is becoming much more immersive, and it's blurring the lines between digital and reality. Like, in my opinion, that's what Web3 is. More decentralization, sure. But for me, blurring those lines between digital and reality. So we hear a lot about VR, we hear a lot about AR, we hear a lot about AI, which again is kind of like blurring the lines. We've read some of these AI blog posts and we're like, my goodness, this is getting scary good. It's blurring the lines. So with these design trends, that's exactly what we're trying to prepare for. So start doing it now, right? Blur the lines with, again, immersive scrolling instead of static scrolling, where it's just kind of the usual. Maybe make it immersive. In other words, have things zoom in, zoom out, have things change based on my human behavior. The visuals are a little bit more connected.
Cool.
So that's the stepping stone, in my opinion.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Number 2, very similar here, micro interactions. So again, same trend here. Very similar to immersive scrolling. You're just seeing micro movements. It could be based on your scrolling. It could be based on time. It could be based on if you've come back to that section or not. But you've probably seen these a lot in websites, or just micro interactions. You hover over something, it zooms in, it zooms out. There's a little bit of movement here. At Big Red Jelly, we call this SISMO, sight, sound, motion. So anything that you can do to kind of arrest the sensations of the human body, that's generally without being overwhelming. And it's interesting, this one line here, right here, right? It's expected micro interactions will be commonplace in design, and the interfaces and experiences without them will fall flat and short. You will notice this whether you consciously do or not. After you visit a site that has some micro interactions, and then you go to one that has nothing, it feels very different. For example, for those iPhone users out there, what happens when you scroll to the bottom of your text messages and you reach the bottom? If you scroll again, there's a bump, like there's a little bump. We don't talk about that a lot, but I promise if you scrolled down to the bottom and it didn't bump like that, it just stuck, you would think your phone's broken. You'd think it's like frozen, something's off, I got to reset my phone. So like those things that we don't even recognize, those are becoming that should be common practice now, right? Which again, how do you implement this into your website? Just A, pay attention to these going forward. B, if you have a builder or a theme or a website platform, see if there are certain elements, depending on which website platform you're using, that have slightly better micro interactions than others, right? There might be 3 call to action squares that you're putting in, and one of them has a little zoom in and one doesn't. Use the one that zooms in, right? Use the one that has a micro interaction. So general rule of thumb there is these are good when used carefully, right?
Perfect. I think, Ernesto had, Q&A throughout, so go ahead and fire if you got something. Good to see you, by the way, buddy.
Hey Josh, sorry I was late. I absolutely love this whole topic. My web designer has been like sprinkling some of this stuff to me, and so it's like awesome.
Nice.
Like it's legit.
Yeah.
So I don't use WordPress. I use another tool called Super, which like takes my Notion pages and turns them into fancy websites.
Oh, cool. Wow.
But my question for you is, does a lot of this animation kind of come in using like CSS or or is it like hover command? Like does the CSS kind of trigger hover commands and whatnot? Or like what is the coding language that we use? Because I'm obviously gonna like take my nuggets here, code
Sure.
it guy and be like, hey, I learned all this amazing stuff. Like, how do we implement?
Sure. Yeah, I won't speak for all teams, but I know our team uses CSS,
Okay.
and more and more. In fact, that going along with everything we just talked about, if I had a nickel for every time I heard CSS from our development team out here, I'd be a very rich man. So like taking, again, like a lot of this is, and then there's the other side of the spectrum where there might be people listening who have a Squarespace website, right? Like, by the way, like there's no right or wrong, right? At one end, you've got custom coded, developed from scratch. At one end, you might have like a, Squarespace template website. But I think no matter where you are on the spectrum, you can look at what tools and themes there are here available to you and say which ones have more of these elements, lean toward those ones perhaps, right? So, but to answer your question, Ernesto, yeah, CSS is what we use a lot. So
Okay. And is there like, because I know there's like W3 Schools is like a CSS library of sorts. Like,
yeah.
is there an equivalent of that for some of the stuff you're showing us here or whatever you're going to kind of?
Yes, there is. There's several. I'll send a couple links. So my team has kind of been putting together a little list of resource libraries that they've got. I'll send those to Jeremy, and then maybe we can just send those out. But yes, yeah.
Great questions. He's bringing the heat early on, getting
know.
technical on us. All right.
I'm that guy.
It's good stuff. Good.
Very
Keep
cool.
it coming.
Okay. Number 3, this one's kind of fun. Anti-modes. You're going to see a lot of this. Let's see. What was the name of the aesthetic? What was it called? Brutalism. You guys, neo-brutalism is becoming a thing. I'll send a screenshot after to Jeremy. It's go Google what that looks like, and you either love that or you absolutely hate it. What's becoming kind of cool, if you Google like neo brutalism web design, it's taking design. I'll come back to this. This is an example of an anti-mode. This is dark mode, right? Which is becoming more and more popular. It's interesting. Like I'm not typically a dark mode guy, but even the people on our team, I think the majority of our team are in dark mode in our project manager or, in Slack. And so these anti-modes are becoming kind of more mainstream. And I think that's cool. I don't know what that means psychologically, but I'm just putting that out there, that there's no right or wrong way, right? So you might have a white dominated website. Someone might have a dark mode website. Those are going to give two very different sentiments and emotions to people. Keep that in mind. But I think what's happening now is there's a little bit of a counterculture saying, yeah, like let's take the neo-brutalism, for example, which throws aesthetic and design out the window, and they say functionality first, almost in your face. They're kind of giving a little bit of a finger to what has been a very design aesthetic dominated industry and saying, no, we want to do it this way. So it's very interesting. This is a vague number, but we're seeing a lot more of these anti-modes, which I think is kind of fun. So just keep that in mind. Dark mode's one. Gone are the days where users maybe occasionally want to switch to dark mode. Now is an expectation that our devices and interfaces are luminous, intensity adaptable, and can change accordingly. That's true. So this might be not super applicable for people's websites, but if I'm using a software, it's actually bizarre to me if I don't have the option to use dark mode. I'm like offended, right? So anyway, keep that in mind for you tech people out there. So it's interesting. Any questions, thoughts?
No, I'd be curious how many people are dark mode like throughout or not, or kind of dabbling and have some apps in it, but it's like not like just it has to be that way for you to have your sanity.
Yeah, it is.
Ernesto, what do
Study.
you?
I'm dynamic throughout the day.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, I've got a couple apps that on my phone that I put in dark mode, but it's kind of a hybrid for me right now. Jason, do you lean one way or the other for stuff? Or are you hating dark mode? That's what Ross said.
Yeah, it's app dependent.
Okay.
For me. Yeah. I find like depends on like that app's layout. It'll just like something's wacky here. I just can't. I don't know. I need that white space in it. But then other things, dark mode is just like it pops. It's great and it flows.
Yeah, that's a good point. Josh, you said your team's a lot of dark mode.
Yeah, it seems like we kind of lean toward it. I should do that. I should do a little poll, see what percent we are dark mode, and if it's app dependent, why?
Yeah,
that's probably true though, right? It probably would be app dependent. Like if there's one that's just way too bright and too white and it feels off and it's just better in dark mode, that might be interesting to consider. Even looking at your own website, certain pages, certain sections are some lighter, darker than others, and does one kind of throw you off because it's too light? I don't know. So
yeah, but I think it's kind of like how good of a job do they do with the design period, and that usually will indicate like, oh wow, they killed it with their dark mode. And like I really like we're a use Microsoft 365 at Brand Builders Group, so Outlook and the Outlook app on my iPhone, right? It's like I use it in dark mode and it's great. It's a great experience, but it's not something I do across everything. So anyway, we shall see.
We shall see. Okay. Number 4, nostalgia. So I think this is a good reminder for anyone who's listening to, again, it's always a good customer, audience. Like, who is your customer? Who is your audience? And let's take, for example, if it is a younger audience, Gen Z or millennials, this is becoming very popular and big brands are playing into this a lot, and for good reason. I mean, nostalgia, in my opinion, might be one of the most powerful emotions I think we could play into. So why not have fun with that? Maybe you don't have to redesign your website to be nostalgic for your millennial audience, but maybe you can play into some content or a downloadable or a blog article that does pull on the nostalgia strings. And it's just fun. We all kind of laugh when we see like these big clothing brands, like we just go through these patterns. And so right now it's like the 90s, even the early 2000s is becoming like a real hit again. We've got a lot of Gen Z employees here at Big Red Jelly. And yeah, it's like I'm going back through the year 2000. It's very bizarre.
I know, man. I love it. I get to relive. It's like, oh, cool. I'm glad I'm not out of date. Like this is I'm cool again.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. And I think you can lean into that. I think you can lean into that with your content. It's a good reminder that audience matters and kind of these trends, right? So nostalgia, you'll see that more and more. There's certain brands that come back because like Champion kind of went through a low period and now it's like the brand. So hey, keep that in mind. This can even play into your keyword research, like SEO people that maybe are chiming in. Like, things change a lot, and there are brands that we thought were dead a decade ago, and now they're at the top of their game simply because of some nostalgia. So, powerful emotion to think about. Okay, this is the last of the design. Then we're going to go into some kind of practical things, and then I'll kind of wrap up. But again, this is something, if you haven't seen it already, this is probably happening right now. Like, this isn't even in the future that much. Is just these large explosion type typography sections. Taking it a step further, you might notice a lot of typography that's animated, or it is the logo, or there's particular elements in the typography. Just big, bold typography on websites is fun. And it's eye-catching, it's captivating, and it serves a couple of purposes. Obviously, it's the language, it's the copy, but it's also design. And I think people have really embraced that. Like, writing is design. It's almost like we're going all the way back to calligraphy, and we're like, writing is a beautiful graphic design. Art, I'm going to embrace that for my website. So I love it. And it doesn't take long to go look at. If people haven't, go to awards.com, right? AWWW ARD. These are like award-winning websites. You'll see that this is frequent throughout, kind of winning sites for good reason. For good reason. So
yeah, I was just going to chime in. I love that too. You think about how many times you're like, all right, what is the right hero image, or what is, you know, like, and this is above the fold as you're showing here, and it's like, you know, clean, you know, don't worry about that, or like when the browser window gets smaller or bigger, like it chops a forehead off, or like, you know, all these complexities with getting the right hero image and making sure it's responsive and is functional. And it's like, boom, out the window with all that, you know. And there's some value in reinforcing the message, the promise, what we would say this, you know, the copy above the fold, like that we're looking at, is kind of like the promise you're making to the visitor. You know, but so there's value in having that visual, of course, but I like just how clean it is. I like the idea, as long as you're not too extreme with the design where it's like, what are they trying to say? Like where it's counterproductive to communicating the message. But I love kind of just the emphasis on the promise.
Agreed. Yeah. It can, going back to what you said, Jeremy, this puts your copy in that much more of an important role. Like, you know, the headline, the words have to make sense, and it's got to be a bold message, therefore make it a bold visual. It can be a double whammy if done correctly. And I like it. Yeah, I like it. Okay, I want to get into some practical trends that you're probably seeing now, kind of transitioning away from design, more into just good things to keep in mind heading into 2023 for your websites. Accessibility and availability, number one, right? So huge trend happening here of making your mobile devices or your websites on mobile tablet just really compatible across all devices. We know this, right? But then also accessible. So there's a lot of softwares out there, a lot of different opinions on these softwares, like Accessibility, or maybe a different type of accessibility software. Is it accessible for those with hearing impairments, visual impairments, right? Anything like that? That's going to be a trend going forward without any end in sight, for obvious reason, right? About 20% of the world's population has some type of digital accessibility issue, whether that's visual, hearing, motor skills, etc. And so if your website's not accessible to these types of folks, well, you're losing out on about 20% of those people, or it's not an optimal experience for them. So keep that in mind, right? Availability, I'd add like translation in here, right? Is now the time to start thinking about, as globalization continues forward, translating your website into different languages, making sure it makes sense across different cultures. It's going to continue to be a priority. So number two, mobile. Check out your website on mobile. Like, we're so used as business owners or entrepreneurs, we're at our laptop, we're looking at our website on desktop probably a lot. Look at it on your phone all the time, right? Just get in that habit. Like I said before, prep for VR and augmented reality by doing some of those simple things that we talked about earlier, right? It doesn't need to be a VR website now, but just try to make it a little bit more immersive using some of those trends. Interactive 3D elements. So you're going to see more of this coming as well. That's something we're exploring currently as we speak. You might get to a certain section on your website. We're used to a downloadable, a PDF. Yes, I think that's very good. I think the next step is having something that people can interact with on that particular row. Maybe they can drag it and scroll it around. Maybe they can zoom in, zoom out. Maybe there's hovering hotspots on that element. It's that, again, blurring the lines of digital and reality, allowing people to interact with your website. That's going to add to the emotional appeal and remembrance of the website, right? And then number 5 here, which will lead into the next section, is just, again, choosing the right online tools and integrations for your website. This is why, going back to the very beginning of me blabbering on now for a while, the web design, right? We call it the build here at Big Red Jelly, because the web design is one aspect of how many for an effective online experience. And so even website, right? What does that mean? Well, a WordPress website, and going back to what Jeremy said, is it a glorified kind of flyer, or is this an online destination that's connected to marketing automations, a CRM, a sales funnel, content rich pages, et cetera, et cetera. So every once in a while, I'd say every year, you should be going back through your website as if you're a customer, as if you're in your ideal, client, and asking yourself what can be improved in this journey, right? Okay, any questions so far? And then this is the last section here, just some quick tips to kind of wrap up. Okay. Again, there's probably a wide spectrum of people that might be listening to this who have, already finished their website. It's top notch. Maybe you're just getting started. Here are some quick tips. This is a line I love to evangelize a lot. We tend to overestimate the marketing and sales ability of our brand new website. So we launch a website. We tend to overestimate the marketing and sales ability right out of the gate. We go live, we say, okay, the leads are just going to start flooding in, right? Most of us know that's more rare. We underestimate, though, its functional and operational ability. And if we just have that perspective with our websites, it totally flips the script and it will improve your marketing and sales. So what do I mean by that is I think a lot of entrepreneurs, small business owners, solopreneurs really underestimate how much you can use your website for. It can be an extension of your team and improve everything from the customer service to the IT, to the onboarding, to the offboarding, to the networking that you do as a business owner. So treat it that way. So here are some ideas to maybe help you do that a little bit more. Number one, CRM is a non-negotiable. CRM, customer relationship manager. So this could be your MailChimp, this could be HubSpot, this could be Constant Contact, this could be, what happens when someone interacts with you or your website? Where is that contact information being stored? And then how are you organizing that and engaging with those people? CRM is a non-negotiable. Like, you need to understand what that is. It's your most important digital asset, or one of them is that database of contacts that you have. Am I going too fast? I'm gonna keep going. Okay. Number two, marketing automations are now the norm.
Yeah, let's hit a question. Let's hit these on the fly. I think that'll be more
Yes.
effective.
Yeah, sorry. So I know BBG is an Infusionsoft house, a Keep
Keep.
house.
Keep.
Keep.
Yes. I recently got in the game with ConvertKit. I know it is an email newsletter. It is a CRM, but I wouldn't, put on the same level as Keep. I know, like, Keep, it has all the tags and like when you have your funnels on your, like, hosted on your website, like, it's able to kind of keep track of like each email and assign the tags and do the auto tagging as they kind of get through a certain part of the video and whatnot. How, like, is it really like based, like, is the CRM itself the thing that can unlock that functionality? Like, should they work with all websites, whether you're a WordPress or a Wix or a Webflow, or is it really like at the CRM level?
Yeah, I'm gonna give maybe an underwhelming response, but it really, like, generally speaking, what I see is people are only tapping into maybe half of what their CRM of choice can do. Like, that's the number one problem that I see. You know what I mean? So we use HubSpot here at Big Red Jelly. I have a love-hate relationship with HubSpot because I know it can do so much, just like Keep. It's like, it's overwhelming how much these things can do. And so, well, what's interesting is first explore the website platform that you're using. So if people are using Wix, for example, a little bit more familiar with Wix, right? It's a starter, right? It's kind of a drag and drop website platform, but it's got a CRM built into the website platform. They call it Ascend, right? So
okay,
try to use what's there before if I bump into like a mom and pop shop and they're using Wix and they're like, hey, I think I'm going to use HubSpot, I'd say no. You're going to pay too much. Yeah. Too much.
Yeah.
But
that's what just to chime in real quick, we always say, like, hey, yeah, in an ideal world, you start with a platform that you can grow with for years and you're not having to switch. But at the end of the day, like, what's most important is that you're successful with implementing whatever it is. If you overcomplicate, overprice, all these things that are counterproductive in the early days of trying to get your business to take flight, then who cares about scaling? You're not even getting traction. So it's like, hey, go
Right.
with what you can wrap your head around, what you can afford, what's going to check some of the fundamental boxes of, hey, I can offer things people can opt in, I can nurture them in some way, right? I can manage my list.
Right.
Like there's some basic fundamentals that most of these back-end systems can do. And so go with whatever one you feel confident you can be successful implementing. And then we'll figure out how to grow beyond that. That'll be a good problem to have down the road, and we'll figure it out then.
Yeah.
Right.
Agreed.
Right.
I made that mistake for several years. I would get distracted by a feature or a benefit of a particular CRM, and they do a good job, like, oh, I want that live chat thing that one can do that mine can't. And then I would jump from CRM to CRM, and 100% agree with Jeremy. I think the battle is like, pick one that you like, works for you, and then just get into it and do the basics and the fundamentals. Yeah.
Sure.
And the features and the benefits, but.
And they should, Ernesto, to come back if it wasn't clear. I mean, most of these will be able to integrate in with, most content management systems, right? Like most website builders. So, you're going to have pretty good interoperability between the front end and the back end, I would say, across the board.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Right on. Okay, moving into number 3, number 4, I'm just going to kind of group these together. So again, just giving some practical examples of using your website in a much more strategic way. So for example, if you're a B2B company or a consultant or a coach, maybe you have like an onboarding form or discovery questionnaire. A lot of us have this type of thing, and maybe we send a Google form, or we send a type form, or we send a Word doc. I don't know. How about instead embed that or connect that into a page on your website, right? Simple change, but now you're just sending that link, bigredjelly.com/get started. And now we have a type form or a Google form that's embedded in there or connected, or at the very least linked in there. And you're sending them back into your brand to just be immersed in your brand. And now they might click to your team. You'd be surprised how many people will go there, do a little exploring, and then come back and then onboard. So use your website as kind of this this butler who's kind of helping everyone in your clients. So I love these kind of little simple ideas. Likewise for resources or onboarding. If you have employees, have your onboarding or resources videos, have them in your website if you can, right? Or link in there. You're just sending everyone back into this brand experience. So any questions, thoughts?
No, I like that one. I think for back end people, it's almost like, is this public facing content? Okay, if it's not, then that may be, you may have a different learning management system or something that's like a hub for stuff on the back end. But not to say this to dismiss what you're saying. I mean, definitely for new customer acquisition, I love keeping it in this branded experience through as much of that journey as possible versus hooking out to Calendly external or some, like whatever it is. So I love that. So great.
Exactly. So even the Calendly example, like this is a popular one. Like it's, very common for us to share our link, or, hey, schedule here, just take it. I would advise take it that step further, take the link, embed it into your website, and then you've got your calendar right there front and center. But then underneath it is your face and your bio, and then testimonials about what it's like to work with you and your latest articles that you've published. It's just that much better than sending them to calendly.com/Josh Weber. And now I'm, lost in Calendly's world. So like, if you can just immerse them in your brand, I think it's a good idea. Likewise with Calendly, again, another thing, I think on their free version, you can set up a redirect after they book, send them to a thank you page in your website, right? Where do they get something for free? Or they, follow you on social media, you follow them. Like I used to have it where every time someone met with me, I would send them to a page on our website and ask them for a review or what it was like to talk with me. Who says they have to do business with you to leave a review? And then we got hundreds of reviews. Had a great chat with Josh at Big Red Jelly. Big Red Jelly seems like a cool place. That was our Google review. And it was like, there are software companies that are multi-million-dollar companies that just do that thing, right? Cough, cough, podium, right? So just like review automation things, guess what? You can do it for free in your Calendly by just redirecting to a review request or something like that.
I
So
love that. That's
those
great.
little things like that are kind of fun. Okay, number 5 and number 6, again, just kind of highlighting, and when we do web design, especially again for startups or small business owners, highlight what your content rich pages are and just get really good at those pages. And so we think blog, right? But take that a step further. Do case studies, testimonials, portfolio pages, awards pages, just identifying what are these content rich pages that probably need to be updated regularly to keep them fresh. It's great for SEO, great for content marketing. Highlight those and get good at managing those, and then just get in a routine of updating those. I think people kind of get lost in, well, what are pages like my homepage? It's probably going to stay pretty similar for a while. And then what are these content rich pages that I should get in the habit of? These pages are meant to evolve and grow regularly. And depending on the website platform you're using, you can make that very fast using universal sections, for example. So when you add a new testimonial here, it updates everywhere, right? There's little tricks like that, but just understanding that a lot of your website should be fluid and adding a lot of content, but make it easy on yourself. Don't be overwhelmed if you're a new website owner, thinking that all your pages, you need to be doing all of this. There are some simple things and tricks that can make that easier, right? So okay, I'm just going to skip forward to, again, this kind of 7 and 8 are like, again, use your website as a networking tool, redirecting your Calendly there, having a QR code on your business card, sending people to your website for helpful information, resources. If you're networking and someone says, oh, yeah, you talked about like the 5 steps I should take when considering my taxes for next year. Be like, yeah, great. Go to joshweber.com/tax prep. I have it all there in video form. Go check it. Like, get used to sending people to your team member that is your website, right? Last thing I'm going to say is I think there's been a real growth in people, especially entrepreneurs, getting comfortable with their analytics. Like if you were to compare today to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, like, what does analytics even mean 20 years ago? Google Analytics being this free tool and people becoming comfortable with that. I think the next phase now is learning about user behavior on your website. I think we're all becoming a lot better at, well, here are my sources of traffic. Here's my session duration, my bounce rate, my referral traffic, my organic, my paid. But I think the next step is for us business owners and entrepreneurs to understand, well, now what's happening when they get there, right? So where are they clicking away? Where are they rage clicking? What would a heat map show me of my homepage? And so there are some tools like Hotjar or SmartLook that would do this. I think this is the next phase of learning for small business owners. And again, that relates to the design. That's where it becomes fun. And you can start to tweak your design according to the behavior once they get there. So
rage clicking. I love that.
Yeah.
Never heard that one before. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a tool that we use, SmartLook, where it will show people rage clicking on your website. So something's broken or they're on mobile and they're rage clicking. Yeah, you want to fix that.
Does that mean they're like?
Yeah. So
that's great.
Anyway, so that's it. That's it, you guys.
Man, so what any other questions that you had a question about integrations or is that we already had that question answered?
It was basically on that.
Okay, so you got that one. Any other questions that you guys have? Okay, let me see over here. Yeah, go ahead, Ernesto.
No, this was awesome. I just definitely looking forward to that W3 Schools CSS.
Yeah, let me write that down. I'll send that over.
I just want to make sure. So the CSS libraries, was there another resource that we wanted to make sure we sent out?
That's it for me.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. I know we have a couple minutes here, so I think we had some other questions that came in through the community before. So let me just look through this. We may have time to hit one or two of these. So what have you seen, when it comes to more last year or two, looking at 2022, like whatever it might be, as far as new functionality or trends that website trends that tend to directly correlate to higher conversion rates? Like our goal again is to get more people to convert. And so if you had to just in your expert opinion kind of summarize, okay, like, and specifically, I am curious about pop-ups because if you have any thoughts on them, because I hate them, but if the data says otherwise, like, okay, well, like, let's keep using them. But it's kind of like, I'm just curious what you're seeing is like, hey, like if you can't do everything, like here's the fundamentals like to think about that tend to have the best ROI.
Yeah. I'm personally not a huge fan of pop-ups either. I think instead going all the way back to number one, immersive scrolling, what's becoming more important are these non-intrusive, subtle animations that accomplish the exact same goal as a pop-up, right? It's can be rather offensive if you think like, look, I don't need it to come all the way up and I have to click on, and then the little X is maybe hidden most of, like, that's the worst.
Yeah.
So, but instead, what's the goal is, I still think there's value there. Take a step back and say, what's the goal of the pop-up? Well, you want to call attention to this thing that you think they're going to be interested at this point in time. First of all, if you land on a homepage and you're at the hero section, and within a second the pop-up pops up, what makes you think that I even know what you are and who you're going to get a low conversion rate on your pop-up. Therefore, have it be a subtle animation, maybe in the next section, or maybe a glowing button off to the right-hand side, much like a live chat. It's there if I need it, but it's not popped up and annoying. In fact, even if you land on a website and the live chat's already open, that bothers me. I'm like, I don't need to talk to someone. I minimize, right? So just have it glow. Just have it glow. Have it kind of and that goes back to those subtle animations. It's more respectful. You're going to get better conversion rates all across the board, in my opinion. And the data is starting to show that. And then going back to that question one more time, less is more. Less is more. That's what has, for the most part, I think, been adopted. That's my big reminder for everyone listening. People do not know about you and your business as much as you think they do, or you think that they should. So less is more. You got to earn the right to tell them more information as they scroll down or click through, right? So
I love that.
Really reduce. Yeah.
It seems like with the with these animation, I think the popularity is happening too because technology is going, so much faster and efficient, so that you can still have a fast website that's not bogged down, because we've had automation, but then it's it's a 12-second load or something, to get that in there. And it seems like Webflow and these other technologies are getting really efficient with their code and all of that, so that now you can still have a fast loading thing and have this wow experience as you go through it.
Yeah. That's always a great reminder. Like, take everything I said with a grain of salt. Like someone might listen to this and be like, oh my gosh, like if you're going to add subtle animations, but it's going to take your load time to 12 seconds, on a mobile device, don't do that. Right. So you have to find that middle ground. But yeah, it's all, agreed.
Just on that note, so what are the advantages of actually like embedding videos directly in our website instead of like posting them on YouTube, where we can like start collecting view counts and whatnot, and actually reduces the page load times, as I understand it? Like, is there any advantage really to like embedding the content on?
I don't like to really ever. I mean, I have yet to hear an argument that's greater than the cons. We like to embed the YouTube, but it feels like it's embedded on the website. You can do that.
Sure. And you could make like round edges and shadow effects and Yep.
And then it feeds into your YouTube video, which again adds to the views there, which is going to add to the algorithm there. So it's a double whammy, and you're not affecting your website load speed at all. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of keeping
cool.
that.
Oh, as I was thinking about it, so you're going to send that CSS resource, but do you have any, like, I know there's a lot of like marketplaces to like purchase illustrations, like Notion now like has so many illustrations that they like made super popular, but do you have any of those like off the top of your head?
I forget that the name is we just bought a subscription to one because we loved it. It has like thousands of not just animations, but also like icon families, like 3D icons, that kind of thing. Like,
is it Envato's thing, Elements?
That's one we have too. I love that one too.
Man, that's a goal.
I'll send it along. Yeah, it's a cool one.
Cool. Thank you.
Let's see, family for animations. Yeah.
Awesome. I think we're bumping up on time here. Any other last minute questions here or anything?
Not for me. Thank you so much,
Good.
everybody.
Yeah,
This was
man.
fun, guys.
Josh,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much, brother.
Thanks
And
for
just
indulging
for
me.
yeah, for you guys here, anybody watching the recording back, if you have additional questions for Josh, if you're looking to get help with any of this stuff, he's one of our implementation partners. So just like him, there's a whole network of companies we partner with. And just so you know, like, oh, like how does that work? How do I go about it? I wanted to share my screen real quick. So you can go inside our membership portal, Thinkific. Over here on the left sidebar, expedite your journey, get implementation help. When you click that, it's going to take you over here, and then you can just say, hey, I want to get connected to the vendors, right? This is how you can submit requests. You can also talk with your strategist, ultimately about, hey, can I get some help with this? I heard from Josh, I'd want to talk directly with him, or I want to know who are all the website companies you work with, just to get, estimates or talk with multiple. So just know that everything you need is ultimately in the membership portal. Go there if you want to take the next step to talk with Josh or anybody else. And then you can directly reach out to me if you have any questions or need anything as well. So thank you guys again for being on. Josh, thank you for your time and the knowledge as always, helping us all get a little bit smarter than we were an hour ago. So we'll get this in Thinkific so it's available on demand, and we will also send out, we'll probably do it in the Facebook group. We kind of have a post that will say, hey, here's a link to get to the recording. And we may actually just put these resources that you're going to share as like downloadable assets in that recording. So it's all like in a central place, because I'm sure other people are going to watch this and be like, oh, that's great. And then they have to scroll through the Facebook group for like months ago and try to find it. So we'll try to get all these downloadable things in there as well for you guys. So thanks again. We'll talk to you guys soon.